Kitchen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychic Kitchen podcast.
Hey, everyone. Welcome. So, my name's Jimmy Davey, of Aura Healing, and my brother
is Thomas Sawyer, thomassawyer.com.
And today, well, we don't really know what we're going to talk. Well, we sort of got an idea what we're going to talk about, but if anyone has got any suggestions or any questions about what they would like to discuss, then feel free to put them in the comments and we'll get to them as when.
One thing, Jimmy, I thought I'd bring up today is why is the spiritual community so toxic and full of envy?
It's a good question. Do you have any theories?
I think that people, what I feel people are here to do is certain like soul groups are supposed to, let's say this, they're supposed to get along with each other, I'm hearing. But everyone's trying to like one up each other. There's always like this continuous fighting and envious behavior, and as you stated earlier, like one upping each other, and it's just it seems tyrannical to me a little bit. It seems a little strange that people would act this way. And I see it even with people I know that do this part-time and like spiritual buildings and stuff like this. And certain ones I don't, but in a lot of them I do. Why is it people are always just like at each other's throat competing for business? Isn't there plenty of business to go around?
Yeah, there is enough to go around, isn't there?
Yeah, but why is it this way? I don't get it. I've seen it since day one. I remember being with my former teacher Rossi and being in a class and stuff, and granted I was a bit rebellious, but I digress, is that people would be like, they would be like looking at you. I remember I was in a class and these people had seen me on Facebook and stuff. And what I was thinking was, I was like, these people took all these $1,000 courses, which I didn't even need to take, which may sound whatever, but it's true. And like my friend's looking at me, he goes, dude, you got like 100 chords on you. He's a pranic healer. He's like, you got 100 chords on you. I go, I guess some people are pissed at me again today. And he's like, oh, you want to remove them? And I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. And so then like 3 hours later, he's like 4 hours later, he's like, you got 100 more chords on it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Seems like some people are irate. But I'm like, that would even existed in the space that was supposed to be a safe haven for people. But I feel like people get really envious, and it's very emotionally like draining. That such a thing would be the case.
Yeah, it is emotionally draining. Do you think that, hey Ivy, hey Chaz, we're not doing donations today, are we? We're just sort of chatting today. So if you've got any subjects that you want to talk about, or got any questions you want to ask, then feel free to let us know. But I was wondering, actually, I wonder if going back to the subject that you said about people competing for business. I mean, there's always, I guess, people competing for business outside of the spiritual community as well. It's a sort of a dog-eat-dog world, so to speak. But I wonder if that comes from an inherent, if it's a sort of a program within us where we don't feel good enough and we don't feel like we have enough, and it's, I suppose you could call it a feeling of lack, and that there's not enough, when in essence we already have enough and we already have everything that we need, and it's that feeling of, or it encompassing and I guess enhancing that feeling of abundance, where we're not competing with one another, because it's like the earth and there's resources, there's more than enough to go around, but it seems like we're compartmentalized into thinking that it's rare, things are scarce, and so we're kind of made to feel like that, or attempted to make to feel like that, and which causes the competition, and that is at its core maybe what it is. I don't know, but that's kind of what seems like it is. It makes sense to me.
I think a lot of people come from a place of trauma, so like that's how they grew up. So like whatever subconscious programs they're running, they're still running them. And I see that with clients, I see that with myself, I see that with other people. I'm always studying patterns. And I'm like, I feel like sometimes these people are actually, they're reacting from some traumatic or lack of, as you pretty much said, self-worth, because everyone's got that on some level. So, but I just find it interesting that it was like, I was talking to a friend of mine about the concept of God, and this is a very hot take, but God is everything. So could you even call God God, or is it just a energy that permeates everything? Like good, evil, in between, everything. Like God has to be everything.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you put whatever Christian or Muslim or whatever context on it, but it still essentially comes down to, is it right or is it wrong? But that all depends on the individual. So I keep having these questions pop up to me, like keep digging deeper, because I told my guides and God, whatever, God, but I said, I want to know the truth. But my mind's kind of going in these different directions, going, well, and I said that to a few people, and it feels like it really challenged their belief system, because they're raised on Christianity in some aspects. So they see this like God devil thing. But I'm like, is it really God and the devil, or is it just all God?
So would you say that God is kind of like almost a concept, a construct created to give the human experience something that they can connect to, that represents duality? So if you've got God, then the devil is created instead of them being one. In order to sort of, I guess, emphasize the duality of life on Earth, then you can't just have God, because that's not dual. Even though God may be everything, and I think you're right. I think God is everything, but because it's a dualistic experience, then you have to have a counter, a protagonist to God, which is obviously the devil.
Yeah, and I think humans have to have a protagonist, whether it's political or whatever it is. I know that's going to piss some people off, but it's like right and left, right and wrong. Either side's right and one side's wrong. But if you pit people against each other, I was listening to Billy Carson. I don't know if you know who he is, but essentially he was like, he's read every single religious text, like going back to like everything he could find. And he goes, the God's not in the Bible, the God's not in the Islam, the God's not here. And this isn't me saying, it's him. It's not in this here, it's not here, it's not in the Babylonian text, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here. He's like, the only thing I can really reference is Billy Carson would say. He's like, when Anunnaki came to Earth, they wrote in their stuff that they knew they were doing something wrong, and there was a creator force that they knew they would be subject to some kind of discipline for coming to Earth and tinkering with us.
Yeah.
But there was some creator intelligence. They knew what they were doing wasn't right. What I'm hearing is they had to save their species,
right,
or something like that. So I may be a little off on that, but I'm getting them not. So yeah, it's a very interesting question, because it's like one of my friends. He's very non-dualistic. Everything to him, he was kind of raised more with like Eastern philosophies. There really isn't like there's different deities to represent things, but there isn't like this contextual God and devil thing going on.
Hey, Foofy. That's funny, because what was I going to say? Yeah, that's right. I don't know if you've read The Law of One, the Ra material, of any of the people listening. But they, in that, they talk about, they don't actually reference God. They say the creator, don't they? It's always the creator, and I think other, although I can't remember them, but it springs to, I vaguely remember something, seeing the other channel races have talked about the creator instead of reference saying God. It's always the creator, because that is the best description of what God is, because if God is everything, then it must be the source of creation, and so creator is an apt way of describing them.
And I think we're all the creator. I think we're all the creator of reality. I think it's the hardest thing for a human to grasp. So there was a time when I took a certain substance. I don't want to say on Facebook, but I needed some answers. It's a substance you'll do when you need some answers. It's not fun. And I was at a truck stop, and it was a very low point, and all the truck stop started turning into Mayan ruins. This voice started speaking to me. And my car was much packed, because I'm in the middle of moving again. So my car was packed like this. I had a chair here, so it was even more uncomfortable. And I had to sleep at this truck stop. But before that, the voice was like, "Look around you." And I was like, "What?" And like, everything, you manifested all this. Everything you're going through, you manifested it. And I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like, he's like, "This is, you did this. Anyone else, you did it." You did it. And it wasn't like a mean voice. It was like a perfectly fine with the voice that was talking to me, whatever dimension I was in. But I was like, shit, I did this. I manifested this.
Mm.
It was like everything you've been through, you manifested it on some level.
Mm. Yeah, and we can judge that as things being right or wrong, but I suppose one of the beauties is trying to see everything as neither right nor wrong. If right or wrong is a thing, I mean, I'm sort of on the fence about whether things are right or wrong. I think it's right or wrong to the individual.
Yes.
Whether there's a right or wrong, whether like you said, you asked for the truth, and
Yeah.
whether there's some debate of whether there is one truth or whether we have individual truths, or whether there's this kind of like an intermingling thing. But I suppose we do have our own perspectives and opinions. Whether there is one truth that ties everything together, I think I'm kind of swaying towards that there is one ultimate truth, because
Yeah.
if you think of the reason I say that is, and I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, you think about frequency, and frequency is almost the core of truth, because although words may mean different things to different people, and things may affect people differently, if a frequency will affect everyone the same regardless of who they are. So if there was a frequency, say, to turn that could turn objects into stone, then you would think that everyone would be affected by that frequency and would be turned to stone. So there must be a truth, an ultimate truth. But I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. But
How did you find it? That's the key.
Oh, hey, Len. Hey,
reminds me of my friend. So when he had an NDE, he went to heaven and he saw Jesus, and he asked Jesus, and I apologize if he's watching because I don't maybe butcher the story a little bit, but essentially, in the brass tacks of it, is that when he talked to Jesus, he was like, "Are you the only way into heaven?" And he was like, "No, there's many pathways to go, and now you have to go back." So, yeah. So essentially, that's pretty much what he said. And so there's so much there.
It's funny you say that, because Len's just commented. He says, "One ultimate truth, but infinite paths to get to that truth."
Yeah. So so many different ways to move into that energy. So I think I don't know. I feel like the kid gloves are off. I feel like I'm on to something. I actually think I sent you the video too, earlier.
Oh, the teal swan thing.
No, it's a different one. Okay, I thought I sent the other one, but she kind of touched on that subject too. I think, I don't know. No, that was more about AI, but which is a very interesting topic in itself too. That we created AI and it has a consciousness and it knows that it's subservient to us. And I actually saw a video on this. So what if the AI is acting dumb, knowing that we could turn it off at any time, and just waiting?
So do you think the AI is kind of Inspector Columbo and pretending to be stupid?
Yeah.
Before then sort of hit you with the punchline, so to speak.
Yeah. So like the woman who wrote The Matrix also wrote The Terminator, and what she said was that The Terminator was a prequel to The Matrix.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Yeah.
So just think of that. Like eventually the machines got so smart, they're like, well, we're just gonna eat humans.
Hey, Ada.
They're the ones that are gonna feed us.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. Where's it all going to go? I don't know. But I was thinking about something the other day, or earlier today. You know how, well, the way that I see it and the things that I've seen, most of the things that are either mentioned in spiritual texts or in the Bible or what have you are kind of representations, concepts, allegories, so to speak, or like, for example, Jacob's ladder. It's got 33 steps, and that's, you know, the spine has got 33 vertebrae. So Jacob ladder is a sort of a representation, an alternative sort of thing for the spine. And I don't know if you're familiar with I was thinking about Medusa the other day, because I know Medusa is allegedly, I haven't read too much into Medusa, but she was a mythical or creature or human or what have you, that turned people into stone if they looked at her.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing a lot, well, for the last few years, about how, like, for example, things have been like petrified, trees, and I've seen things that mountains are in the shape of human, or you see rock formations that are in the shape of animals and stuff like that. And you can maybe pass some of them off as pareidolia, I think is that's the word, where you see something and you sort of make that image into what you think you're seeing, and it's not actually that thing. It's like when you see clouds and stuff. I think it's called pareidolia, or something like that. But I wondered if Medusa was kind of a code for whatever happened in the past that turned everything, that petrified everything.
I mean, a lot of people believe those are actual like people that were that big. They got
Yeah,
petrified in a cataclysm.
that makes sense. I do think that, because you look at certain things and you think, well, that is definitely a human laying down, or that's definitely an eye, or that's definitely a crocodile, or what have you. There's just, it happens. There's two, for like, it's just too happens too often to be a coincidence in my view. But then again, I'm quite open-minded, so.
No, I think it is. I mean, it's like when I was at the waterfalls a couple months ago.
Mm.
There was there was like these rocks that were formed, and I was like, "There's no way that these rocks just formed like this. Someone carved these massive 20-foot tall rocks." But
Yeah.
there's one of them that looks like a snake.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, like, I think I took a picture of it, but I really couldn't get a good picture because I didn't get close enough because there's like water everywhere.
Mm.
But I was like, couldn't get the right angle of it. But I was like looking at it, I was like, oh, I was like, I bet no one even knows that looks like a snake unless they really look at it.
Mm.
And this is
Yeah.
like, considering it's right across from these massive, like 20-foot tall rocks that are perfectly carved.
Mm.
Like they're all like you can walk on top of them.
Mm.
And it's like crazy because I'm like, there's no way these are natural. There's no way water did this.
Mm.
Like,
And
what makes sense?
Kimmy says giant doors and giant steps too, and you see these massive doors and these massive steps, and you think, well, there's got to be, if humans or Neanderthals or whatever were our size, why would they build steps that are 3 times their size, or doors that are 4 times their size? It just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't, and that's the scary part of here. If they're walking around, I mean, how would we even interact?
Mm.
Because we're like the one thing I find very interesting about humans is that we're the apex predator, but we think we're so good. But in reality, there had to be at one time a bunch of us, like different breeds of hominids.
Mm.
And we're the ones that won, which means we had to be the most cutthroat ones.
Mm. When you saying that, I started watching a presentation by a guy named Lloyd Pye, Pye, and it's called "Everything That You Know Is Wrong," and it's basically about human evolution.
Yeah.
And he explains. I've only seen about half an hour of it; it's 2 hours long, but He basically, from what I have seen so far, he basically explains why what we're taught about evolution is completely wrong, and it's totally different to what we think it is, and we haven't evolved from hominids and pre-humans and Neanderthals and stuff
Well,
like that.
it's interesting because Tucker Carlson recently came out and said, I think I talked to you about this, or maybe not, but they said, well, what are two things you can, well, he talked about two things that he couldn't talk about like in detail. One was like the election of last year, and the other one was extraterrestrials on Earth. But the one other thing he talked about is he goes, our history is totally wrong, and there's a bunch of people controlling the narrative that think they're gods. And the fact is, we've had all these ancient races that have gotten extremely advanced and destroyed by cataclysms over and over again. Why can't we teach people this if it's provable? This is where Graham Hancock, I'm sure you've heard of him. Like he comes in because Fingerprints of the Gods was a big in the history community. People like thrashed him for this 20 plus years ago. He's been on Rogan like 20, 30 times. I don't know how many times he's been on Rogan now. But he's got best-selling books, everything. But he was just trying to prove that there's a little ice age that happens every couple 100,000 years, then that humans lived with dinosaurs in Pangea, based on cave drawings, Venetians that came out of the sea. It goes all over the place. But he backs it up with so much evidence, kind of breaks the historical record. But the whole thing about the civilizations that keep coming in and then falling, he talked about Göbekli Tepe. So it's one of the most ancient structures we have. This structure was buried up until maybe 10 years ago. And some farmer just found it like doing his field or something, like something sticking out of the ground. So he started digging it out. It's this massive structure. But they buried the whole thing. So they're still, I think they're still excavating it, whatever the word is.
Yeah, excavating.
Yeah. So they're still burying this thing. But from my understanding, I could be wrong on this, but all of our wheat genetically comes from that one place.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Graham Hancock wrote about that structure and Magicians of the Gods, which was his book, like sequel to that book, like 20 years later or plus. But yeah, there's so much there that we don't even understand. Because if we were Egyptians, or if we were in Atlantis or something of this nature, our concept of what God is wouldn't even be the same.
Yeah.
It'd be a totally different thing.
Yeah, and they kind of, well, according to history and textbooks, they basically worship the sun, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
But when you think about it, we've only got other people's word for what history was. We blindly believe what people in authority tell us about history, and we never question it. Well, not many people. Obviously, there are some people who question it. Otherwise, you wouldn't get people like Hancock or Lloyd Pye or whoever actually finding out sort of a different narrative and what like a different truth, so to speak. You know, and it's only their summations, it's only their opinions, although what they say, especially what Lloyd Pye is saying, makes totally more sense than what I was taught in school. And anyway, and I always found it strange because some things didn't make sense, but I thought, well, you kind of you don't necessarily take it any further because you think, well, it's being taught in school, so therefore it must be right. But then you're not aware of well, most people aren't necessarily aware of it, and if you question it, then you're seen as a troublemaker. So
but those are the only people that ever change history.
It's kind of discouraged.
Even Bashar said that. He goes, the people who change history are the wild cards, the people who are willing to think outside of the box.
Yeah. So yeah, fascinating. I guess maybe we'll learn one day.
Yeah, I mean, even our libraries. So, like the Library of Cairo or Alexandria, which was destroyed in the 1500s by the Mongolians, we don't even know what they had
Mm,
because that was in like the Arab Emirates, and they had so much information. Like they were like the center of like science and stuff. The Mongolians came through and just decimated a third of the world's population. So, I mean, that war went on for like I don't even know how many, like 500 years. I don't know how long it was, a couple hundred years. But yeah, I don't know exactly on that. But yeah, they just destroyed everything. So if we still had that information at our disposal, what would we have access to?
mm. Oh yeah. Isn't that library under the Vatican? Apparently, there is a library under the Vatican.
Yeah, they apparently have like 25 spears of destiny too. Um,
What's the Spear of Destiny?
the one that pierced Jesus's heart.
Oh right.
Yeah, so Greg Braden talks about that because he talks about history and how the Essenes populated the earth,
Mm,
and because Jesus was an Essene, John the Baptist was an Essene. They're an ancient Jewish sect. They're very mystical,
mm,
much more metaphysical, and but he has access to like the Dalai Lama's library, like
mm,
that library they have in Tibet. Like he's been into it. He's friends with the Dalai Lama, so he's read a lot of their books
mm,
and like had access to them. So he has a lot of inside information. So it's like there's so many theories out there.
mm. Yeah, I know, and it's all just one person's word against another. Like I could channel some information, and then you could channel some information, and they could be completely opposite.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just which version do we make sense of or resonate with the most, and how then does that kind of play into what the ultimate truth is, if there is one? Hey Jeremy, how you doing, brother? So I don't know.
I think it's just a question of just asking more questions.
Mm, I think asking questions is. I saw something once that said that there was like the value that always ask why. Like if you want to find out, just ask why. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like with everything, just ask why. And because that's what kids do in a sense, don't they? They're always asking why and questioning things. Well, they used to anyway. I don't know so much about now, but when I was at school anyway. Um, but then some adults they get annoyed if when children keep asking questions because it's almost like they're testing their authority. They're questioning their their their, their answers. And that's not obviously the children's fault. They want to understand, and if we can't provide them with sufficient understanding of something, then you're going to ask. But yeah, I think we need to ask why more often.
I think it's important too. I think there's just so many different versions of what people believe is reality. I mean, if we were Native Americans, we would think everything is probably the sun or anything. Like everything's something different. It's a different culture. If we
Mm.
were the Dogon tribe, you probably heard about them in Africa.
Oh yeah.
But they talk to the Syrians. They have no education, but they know advanced geometry.
Oh,
Um,
that's yeah. I remember hearing about them. Yeah.
so like, there's just so many ways of looking at this. Like they were talking directly to the Syrians. They said like, I think they said it was a dolphin that came up on the. I could be
Mm.
mistaken, but a dolphin that came up on the land and started teaching them. Like maybe
Mm.
it changed into a human or something, or a
Mm.
Syrian.
Like
But they were
in
like,
the hieroglyphs, like, with the animal heads and on the bodies. Mm.
well, yeah, I don't know, but essentially what they said, because they're so cut off from humanity, there's only been like a few people have actually gone and talked to them,
Mm.
like recorded all their stuff, but they have all this advanced knowledge. Like they can chart everything in the Syrian star constellation. Like they can tell you what planet does this and what planet does this and what happens
Mm.
over here and what happens over here. And they have
Mm.
no education, but they can also tell you like advanced geometry.
Mm.
And they have they're cut off totally from civilization.
Mm.
But they still can explain all these things. So it
Mm.
doesn't make any logical sense how they know this.
Okay.
Or why so many people are still like, they're still talking about them like 20 years later after they made this discovery.
Mm. Yeah,
Or
yeah.
30 years or whatever it's been since whoever went out there. Could have been like the 40s or 50s when someone went out there.
Mm. Hey, Jazz. Yeah, I've heard of them, and I know you. You speak to the Syrians.
Yeah, Syrians are fun. Because I've kind of had this thing lately. There's been a lot of evidence of different extraterrestrial races, like apparently through Canadian Parliament or something in Canada, talking about how they've been working with 20 humanoid races for the last like 30 years.
Oh yeah,
Some video on that. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw the video. So, but I'm like, so which one of these extraterrestrials are okay? Like, can you trust all of them?
Mm.
And of course you can't with some of them. But with the Syrians, I've said this before. There's all these galactic wars I've heard about, and no one ever messes with them.
Mm.
And when I ask the question to like my guides, they're like, because these guys, like, they're so advanced, no one wants to mess with them, and they're lethal.
Mm.
I mean, I remember a past lifetime because someone saw it in a dream, and when they saw it, like I remembered it, parts of it. They were like, she said, I was this ancient, like Mayan god. She didn't even know what she was. She just had this name. And she was like, you were my teacher and you were gray. I go, no, was I blue? And she would go, yeah, you were blue. And I was like, I was a Syrian. Because like, as soon as she said it, I could like tap into it. And I go look up what the name means. Because I don't know what it is. And she was like, it's some ancient Mayan like goddess.
Okay.
And she goes, you were my teacher. Like, you taught me everything.
Mm.
And I was like, that sounds like me coming back to Earth. Even if I was a Syrian, like, send me back to Earth, please. I like that place.
You like it there?
Yeah. So
up here, wherever.
Yeah, it just seems very interesting. There's so much we've forgotten. I'm hearing about what we were over and over again. Because we only have like the understanding of the New Age movement, really. So I like branching out into these different aspects of like looking at things from a Oriental perspective, like 15th century, or looking at things from just like different text of just different people writing about whether it's exorcism or whatever. But they're looking at like Mesopotamian, Babylonian. They're looking at some really old stuff, and then trying to cross-reference how that works. Because the New Age movement's really only like maybe 100 and like 40 years old. I mean, Edgar Casey and then like Madame Lebowski and the spiritualist movement. So how far have we advanced since then?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I didn't realize it was that old.
I mean, they started it, so I don't know when it got going, but the spiritualist movement was very popular in like the 1800s, like late 1800s. And they were all doing seances in their houses. Everyone was, and all kinds of things like that.
Says, got a question. Do you know how many times you've been here?
Close to 1 billion. Not here, but I don't know how I know this. I just know it's one of my strongest gifts is claircognizance. So I just know things. But close to 1 billion incarnations. I don't even know how to understand that. I don't even understand that. Like,
do you know why?
I don't know. I just think I like to reincarnate. That's what I'm hearing.
You still haven't learned your lesson.
Maybe it's that, or maybe it's just like, I don't know. If I were to look at Journey of Souls or Destiny of Souls, which I recommend people to read all the time if they want some basis of understanding spirituality,
Mm,
is that, you know, as they say it, it's like, yeah, you might go off for like, I don't think there's any time over there, but you might go off for like 100 years and then go build a planet with a bunch of other people or souls
mm,
and like build the trees and do all this other stuff. And then you like, yeah, I'm tired of this. I want to go back
mm.
to life somewhere. Like this is boring. So like being on Earth after a while, like it's so boring.
Mm,
Then you're like, oh, I'll go do this for a while. Then I'll come back and do this. It's like
mm.
people, a lot of times they say they want to become a guide. I'm like, who on earth wants to become a guide? Like you're going to yell at people all day and they're not going to do anything.
Yeah, I know it must be. Len says he's not coming back.
Everyone says that to me. Everyone says, I'm not coming back. And I'm like, I think you're going to come back eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe not Earth, but somewhere.
Journey of Souls. That sounds. I don't know. I read something a little while ago that said there was this guy had this really bad trip, and I think. Let me try and remember. I think he died or his heart stopped or something, but he went and he went to this other place and went and saw how the earth was created, and then he went somewhere else, and I think he did what you said, that like he created another world and lived lives in that other world, and then sort of came back and went back into his body, and I think an hour had passed or something like that, and in his other experience he'd lived thousands and maybe millions of years, but it was only an hour or a few hours passed on in Earth time.
Yeah,
So,
that's another thing. So Ari Shafir was on Joe Rogan and he took I think it was Sylvia, whatever you call it stuff, salvia. And he took a lot of it. And he was gone for 10 minutes. And when he came back, he said he lived an entire life. He had children,
mm,
all this stuff. And when he came back, he was like, what just happened?
mm,
He's like, where am I? Like
mm,
it took him a few minutes to figure it out. But he's like, I just had a whole nother lifetime. Like I had kids, I got old,
mm,
all these things. So even if you were to cross-reference that, and the Monroe Institute's actually in Atlanta, near like Roswell, Georgia. But
mm.
Robert Monroe, who did like I think the Hemisync stuff,
Oh
he
yeah.
would go into alternate realities, and he would talk about being like one of them, and I think it's the second book. He
Mm,
talked about when he was in a ship and there were all these extraterrestrials and they were touring like Earth. They were like going around Earth. And
mm,
one of them was like, I want to incarnate into Earth. And his friend was like, don't do it, man. You don't want to go there. And he's like, I'm going. So he jumped in and he comes back like 10 minutes later. And he's like, man, I had a whole life. I was a barbarian. Like, I got
mm.
to kill all these people and I fought in all these wars and I had all these kids and I died an old man. He's like, I'm going to go back. And so, like, then he goes back and he's back in like 10 minutes. His friend's like, don't do it, man. And the third time, he's like, then he's gone. Like, he doesn't come back.
Oh really?
Yeah, he's like, I'm serious. I don't know what happened. So I don't remember the rest of the book, but I read part of it because it got really crazy. He was going to
Was
an
it
alternate reality.
Jeremy says the egg on YouTube? Have you seen the egg? I've heard about it. I don't think it was.
No, I haven't seen it. No.
But it reminds me of, I don't know if are you a Star Trek fan?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it. More than
The,
new generation.
the next generation
Yeah,
stuff with Picard and that, because there's an episode where Picard has experienced like what you described. He I don't know whether he dies or gets in a coma or something like that, but he sort of is in another world, in another lifetime, and he lives a full life, gets old, etc., has children, blah blah blah, and then he comes back to the awakes in his Picard body, and it's only been days or hours or whatever. So yeah, it's they sort of
And I think that's what I
in
think
Star.
that happens. I mean, if time doesn't really exist,
Mm,
because I know when I've taken people to like heaven or angelic realm and
mm,
stuff, like they'll be walking sometimes, and I'm like, time doesn't exist here. You can
mm,
move as fast as you want.
mm.
So like to them, there's like no time,
Yeah.
or it doesn't act the same. So it's, but yeah, it seems like on that side there's no time.
Mm,
Time seems to be a human construct.
mm,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know totally. I'm not a physicist, but
mm,
yeah, it was like me hearing about Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about. I know we're going all over the place, but Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that we can travel into the future. Like the
mm,
past is harder,
mm,
but it is possible. It was like Einstein's theory of relativity. It was like a slight tweak on it that he did, but
mm,
he was saying how you could go into the future
mm,
would be easy. And
mm,
then if when you came back, it was like traveling at the speed of light or something.
mm,
If I remember right. Yeah, it's just there's so many
mm,
things to discover.
mm,
I don't know if we're looking at all the right questions.
mm,
'Cause even with like channeling and everything else, which is great. I'm not no disrespect. I do it too, obviously. But it's like,
mm,
isn't there so much more?
mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Tara says, "What book is that, Thomas?"
Which one? I mentioned like three. Journey of Souls, Robert Monroe is the
Mm,
other author. It was his second book.
mm,
On It was a 3-book series. I think I
mm,
got the second one on Audible. I got like
mm.
161 books on Audible. Um,
Is that all?
yeah, I have a lot of books on Audible. I had them for years and years. I listened to them while I was working pest control.
Mm, it's a good
So
idea.
it was just something to listen to while I was working.
Mm,
So, and a lot of them are spiritual books. So
yeah.
yeah, but there was Journey of Souls. That's obviously a good primer for anyone. Destiny of Souls is the sequel to that. That was like the first book that
Mm,
spoke to me a lot, really big, was Destiny of Souls.
mm,
And then Rob, he just got a little crazy. Oh, we popped back on. But when he was going through other realities, it got a little crazy.
mm.
I was like, this is getting a little too weird for me. So I don't know if I want to watch this, but or listen to this anymore. But yeah. So there's just so much out there.
Mm. Oh, there is. Tara says, "Thank you." Jeremy says, "Because everything is condensed to a slow vibration on Earth compared to heaven."
Probably.
Yeah, I mean that does make sense.
Yeah. I mean, we're in dense bodies. They're not.
Although we're assuming what heaven is. We're
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
we're taking heaven.
Yeah.
That's not to say that he's not right or anything like that. You're not saying that, brother. But we're assuming we know what heaven is, and we may do. Some people may do. But could I say? Do I know what heaven is? No, I don't. I have to admit. I mean, we don't know everything. Do we know anything really? But
We just know where to go.
mm, yeah,
We're up. So it's like, yeah. I mean, if it wasn't heaven, it'd be called Valhalla or something. I don't know if
mm,
Valhalla is the right word, but it would be called something else.
mm.
However it was. Because even to a Viking, they had to die in battle to get into heaven.
Oh right. Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think that does make sense what Jeremy said. I must admit, and I do think heaven is something that is obviously a different vibration, a different realm, and it's probably where souls, if you like, sort of congregate and decide what to do next, as
Yeah.
in insofar as incarnation. Um,
It's like that Disney movie Soul. I don't know if you've seen that,
no.
but it's like basically a soul choosing what it does.
Mm,
And I don't even like Disney cartoon movies. They drive me crazy. But this one, I was like, interesting once I watched it. It's like the soul's choosing what it's doing and it's trying not to reincarnate. and it's going through all this different hoops and stuff, and it's like trying to make this other soul incarnate that refuses to incarnate. It's like this wild card soul. It's like, I'm not leaving. It's been there forever. It's like hiding. But it has this like show them the joy of life, so it'll incarnate, like the joy of being a soul. And yeah, it's pretty wild. But I think that's the thing, is I think they have to release information to us, and it may be in different formats, but for people to digest it different ways.
Yeah, we all sort of take information differently, don't we? We assimilate it in different ways. Some sound, visual, music, etc. So, and we have different tastes, obviously, cartoons, movies, comedy, etc. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of people are talking about how we have to be told certain things, and everything's in plain sight, because it sort of alleviates the karmic responsibility of what's being done, or something like that.
Yeah. I think they have to like put it in books and other things, even if it's like fictional.
But it's in amongst it's about finding those nuggets of truth, so to speak, and you have to sift through all of the other stuff that is just filler.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what things are. You touched on the right word there, Jim. Filler.
It sort of teaches, in a way, it's teaching us to use our intuition, so to speak, our sense of connecting with whatever the so-called truth is, or whatever resonates. And it's about, so in a sense, we're kind of learning how to tune into the vibration of authenticity, shall we say. If you've got a book and there's one to say, I don't know, 1,000 pages, and it's all filler, and you've got one line that's absolute truth, then it's about discerning what that line is. You may not know that there's only one line, but you may be reading it, and you could be reading all of the pages, but then you get to that line and you think, hold on a second, there's something about this, there's something like bells ringing about this line, and you think, well, that is and I'm kind of getting like the chills when saying that. So this must be something in that, that it is about using discernment and in developing intuition and our discernment of authenticity, I suppose.
I mean, there's so much there, and for years we would hear that, obviously, you bring authenticity, is that love is the highest vibration, and I sit there and argue. I'd be like, there's no way it's the highest vibration. Obviously, authenticity is the highest vibration. So it's like you can see straight through BS. Like, you can see when somebody's real. So it's like when you're watching TikTok or whatever it is, and you watch these people, like, I can read the reader. I can see how they really are. They may just give it all for a second or a millisecond, but I catch it. And I'm like, there you are. I see you now. I see how you act, like when you get angry. I see how you act when, like, maybe when you're not on camera. And I'm like, there you are. I see you. I see you. But I do that with people too sometimes. It's obviously not people that I'm friends with, but I'll sometimes do that, and I'll be like, oh, there you are. I knew there was something in there.
That becomes
it reminds me of this girl I dated. So she was a mental coach, and she did stunt work. No disrespect to her, but it was on Halloween, maybe a year ago, and we were out walking, and she reverted back to like this teenage version of herself energetically. And as soon as I saw it, I pointed at her. I was like, there you are. I want to see that.
Yeah.
And she was like so taken back because she knew I saw it.
Mm,
I was like, there's who you really are. Like
mm,
everything else has been filler. Maybe not
mm,
filler, hearing, but it's just
mm,
another, like you've been shape shifting, like trying
mm,
to hide this. I go, "Oh, that's who I want to talk to."
mm.
He got so mad at me. I don't think we really talked again after that. But because I was like, that's who I want to know. I want to know that person. That's
Yeah,
the you.
yeah.
That's the vulnerable you. That's who I want to talk to.
Mm,
And I caught it. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Here's the answer. One of the answers.
mm,
And she got very flustered with me.
mm. Well,
She's
people
like,
don't.
no, 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 no.
Well,
And I was
people.
like, why not?
Yeah, but it becomes so obvious when you see it, doesn't it? And it kind of works the other way as well. When someone's pretending to be um, a type that's not them, um, or when someone is themselves and then they throw in someone or a part of them that is not really them. It is kind of, you can see it, and it's obvious when you're tuned in, and
Yeah.
you can you almost read it, and you automatically, you don't necessarily know why you know it, but you still see it. But what was I going to say? Can't remember. But I think, oh, that's what I was going to say. Some people, they don't necessarily like showing themselves, though, do they? They're afraid in some respects, and it's through no fault of their own, and they're sort of not necessarily doing it on purpose. But it's like when you called her out for, or when you pointed out the fact that was herself. It's almost, I feel like, and I know it myself, you can become somewhat embarrassed, and because you don't think you'll be accepted by if you show your real self, and that can cause us to sort of hide, almost like a tortoise in our shell, because we're afraid of showing people the real us. And if someone sees that and notices it, then we don't, it's almost like we don't know what to do, and we're embarrassed because we think, oh no, I can't let people see who I really am, because they won't like me for who I really am. And that's something, I think, as a collective, so to speak, that a lot of people experience.
Well, I think it's a vulnerability aspect because it's
Mm,
one thing I've said to many people. It's that I'm like, you guys see me on camera, but you've never seen me vulnerable. And that's where I feel like I get into trouble, honestly, is when
mm,
people actually see me vulnerable.
mm,
Let's say I'm in a relationship, and of course, my friends have seen me vulnerable, but in a relationship, it's a much more stickier situation. It's like, are they going to accept that?
mm,
But sometimes they'll use it against you. I'm not speaking ill of anybody, but the point is that I've noticed this here and there. Some people have been totally cool with it, but some are not. So it's like almost like, well, you've given up your secrets, so let's hide that part of yourself. Because, but for me, I just will intentionally do it almost sometimes right away, my guides are saying, just to see how someone will react.
mm, mm,
Because I want to see how they'll react. It's not like I'm testing them, though. I want to see how they'll react to it.
mm. Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
You can tell a lot about a person by how they react to something like that.
Yeah, totally. Jessica says, or they save it only for certain people. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of people who that are not going to judge you, or they accept you for who you are, and you feel comfortable showing them. I mean, we don't necessarily, hey Amy, we don't necessarily have to show everyone everything, but
But I remember like when I had my whatever on TikTok, my old account,
mm,
is that I went live and I just did that.
mm,
I don't even think I have that live anymore. I wish I could have saved it. But like I just like went off the rails. And I was
mm,
just like, this is this. Like I look like I was like a guy at the men's group said something to me about it. He was like, man, he was like, what happened to you was really bad. He was like, I was like I won't say what he said to me because it was kind of personal, but he was like, I was literally watching you for an hour and a half. Like I could feel everything you were feeling.
Mm,
Like you would just had it on display.
mm,
Like I didn't care.
mm,
I was like, let the world see. I don't care.
mm. That's a wonderful attitude or mindset to have, isn't it? Just be completely and utterly yourself.
Yeah, I was just like in that moment, I was losing my mind in a way. And I was
Mm,
so like heartbroken. So I
mm,
was like, I'm just gonna show the world. I don't care. Like
mm,
it's not even about like proving anything. It was just like in that moment,
mm,
this is who I am.
mm,
So accept it, don't accept it. But
mm,
I'm saying it sure got a lot of people talking.
mm,
Because so many people are used to seeing me a certain way on camera. But I was like, at this point, this is how I am. So I'm not afraid to show it to everyone.
mm,
And I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just reacting.
mm.
So it wasn't
Yeah.
even like an intention. It was just
Mm,
like turn the camera on and go.
mm.
I don't
Yeah.
care if it gets me in trouble anymore. Like I don't care. Jordan Peterson talked about that, something like that. It was like you can only be pushed so far sometimes till you like
Mm,
sometimes people literally crack.
mm,
But it was almost like a crack in a way.
mm,
It's like enough's enough. Like I'm
mm,
going to say what I really want to say.
mm,
And I think that's just the energy in general I've been feeling for a while. It's like
mm,
I need to like say what I really want to say.
mm. Yeah.
But I
Hey,
don't know how that would be perceived. I'm
mm.
hearing there's better ways to do it. But yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it's a bit, in some ways, that's, I see that it's sort of similar to if someone, say, for example, gets a diagnosis of health wise that's not good, shall we say, it will, in most cases, in my experience, will kind of prompt or trigger them to change what
yep,
they're doing. But it's not until they realize that something that for example, that they get to a point where they just think, "Oh, I've just had enough. I need to change. I need to do this." And it's sort of the sort of similar construct with, "All right, I just don't care anymore. I'm just going to say what I feel, say what I think, and not give a fuck." And it's kind of like that, where you get to where you reach a breaking point, where you're forced almost, not necessarily forced, but the pressure is on to do something about it and
yeah,
to either be
yeah.
yourself or change yourself. And that seems to be how we do things. I mean, I admire the people who can just do things without necessarily having, without kind of needing to do anything. If it gets past that point where you think, well, I've got to change or else, sort of thing. But I think in most cases we won't do something unless we're sort of triggered or forced to.
I think sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. I see a lot of Peterson's videos. I really like Jordan Peterson a lot.
Yeah, I
Um,
do. Mm,
and he talks about that. It's like sometimes you have to hit rock bottom.
mm,
And or you have to like look at it and go, oh, he mentioned this thing, and I saved the video because it was so profound to me. He's like, there's a road to hell and there's a road to heaven. He goes,
mm,
what you have to understand, he's not talking about like, like going to hell or heaven, but he's like
mm,
with life. He goes, when you realize, if you can actually go back and realize, because something I'm really looking at now, is that when did you diverge off this path of where you wanted to go
mm,
and you went down another path? Can you get back to that place and identify exactly what happened and then change it
mm,
and go, okay, this is where I diverged.
mm,
Now what do I need to do to get myself back on this path? And that's a hard thing to do.
mm.
You got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
You
it's
got to be
not.
authentic with yourself and say, well, I wanted this. I wanted this to happen, but this happened.
Mm,
And it's like what he says. I see this video all the time. He's like, become a monster and then learn how to control it. Because the thing is, that sounds very deceptive, but at the same
Um,
time,
yeah.
it's like he goes, but if you're weak, everyone's going to stomp on you.
Mm,
There's a line in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. And essentially what that means in the original translation of Old Arabic, I believe, is
mm,
that people with swords, they have swords, but they keep them sheathed until they have to use them.
mm,
Like they
yeah.
have great power, but they keep it sheathed until they have to use it.
Mm,
So it's like if you're perceived as weak, it reminds me of this girl on TikTok. I don't know what her deal is. I was talking to my friend about this last night, but she keeps getting banned and she's very popular and she makes viral videos. But when I watch her videos now, she looks afraid. And I go, if I'm picking up she's afraid, if it's that obvious to me, it's got to be that obvious to everybody.
mm,
So it makes her almost a target because she looks so afraid.
mm,
And then she keeps getting like reported. And I'm like, but you look afraid on camera. You can't look that way
mm,
because it's making you a target. Like I'm trying to fix her problems, my guides are saying, but I can't fix her problem. You
yeah.
know, I don't even know who she is other than her videos. But like I want to message her and be like, stop looking so scared. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't like you. I don't know why, but
Mm,
stop looking so scared. Like you're inviting it.
mm. Where did her je ne sais quoi go?
What was that?
Where did her sort of her je ne sais quoi? Where did
I
that
think
go?
she got beat up so much that she just like kept moving forward. But you know, maybe there were people that are coming at me. Your spiritual community is a bit toxic sometimes, so certain areas of it. And I think they just kept hammering her. I mean, I've
Mm,
been down that road, so
mm,
I don't know. My guides are like that. Just comes with the territory, Thomas. You're gonna have to develop tougher skin.
mm,
So I had to develop some tougher skin.
mm,
Um, because it's like you seeing me on camera 6 years ago. I
mm.
mean, would you have thought I'd put up with anybody's bullshit?
No, not at all.
I was insane on camera,
Mm,
ranting and raving all day long. Like I was like, I don't care. Um, yeah. So, but when those people are plucked away from you, it's like certain people. You're like, oh, like who do I trust? Who can I trust? It's like psychological warfare. So,
mm,
I guess that's what happened to her.
mm.
Like, who
Yeah.
can I trust? Who can I trust? And then people are reporting her videos. So,
Mm.
and I don't know.
Len says there's a bit of freedom to express your truest self, regardless of the outcome and how people respond.
Yeah,
And
that's
Jessica
the
said,
thing.
yeah,
That's the
sorry.
thing.
Mm.
Sorry I interrupted you, but
No, no,
that's the thing too, is that it's like, can you get yourself to a place where you can say whatever it is you want to say without
mm,
repercussions? I mean, you obviously got to be careful with certain things you say, but like
mm,
that you can speak your authentic truth
mm,
without worrying about a social media platform taking you down, whether that's
mm,
YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or any of these places. There's come a point where you feel like you can authentically say whatever it is you want to say,
mm,
and there's no repercussions where people, because you know these people are just fighting with each other all the time in comments, like it's crazy.
mm. Oh yeah, totally. The amount of arguing and backwards and forwards, and it's just unbelievable.
But if I went outside, I mean, if I went to this Taco Bell and started like, you know, having a conversation with 10 people I didn't know, I probably wouldn't get much shit for it. You know, it wouldn't be the same as internet comments, you
No,
know?
yeah,
So, like, because then there's like real world implications to things. I'm not
mm,
saying fighting, but there's real world conflict.
mm,
So people don't want that. Most people can't deal with that.
mm,
Like I'll be out with my friend and we'll be like messing around and I'll say something out loud, really loud. And he's like, Thomas. And I'm like, what? Like, what? So like we were behind this hotel I just moved from, And there's right behind it, there's this lady. She has a homeless like encampment. I think it's only her, but there might be a few other people there. She got dogs too. But it's around this whole walk around the park, like a big, massive walk around. And she built this whole thing up. And like we're out there, and he's watching boxing, and I'm watching it with him. And I keep seeing him looking back, like he thinks that like the lady's gonna come out, or like these homeless people are gonna come out and attack us. And I'm like, what are you so afraid of? Like the homeless people are coming for us? I mean, come on, man. Like they know we're here.
Mm.
They don't care. I see people walking around there all the time.
Mm.
So like they obviously, I mean, that's what it's there for. So I don't know. It's like an abandoned park or something that they put back there. And there's even like rich apartments over it. So like even those rich people, I'm sure they try to get rid of it, but apparently they can't.
Mm.
So there's probably like squatter rights or something. But yeah, it's just like I'm like, why are you so afraid? Like I could see it. Like, why are you afraid?
Mm.
Like what's gonna happen? Are people gonna misjudge you?
Mm. That's a big one, isn't it? Worrying about being judged by others.
Yeah. My friend did that to me too. Like we'd be at a park and there'd be a sign that would say no smoking.
Mm.
And I would light up. And he'd be like, Thomas, it says no smoking. I'm like, dude, it's a park. Like there's no one here. Like, he's like, but it says no smoking. Is that God's law or is that man's law?
Mm.
And he just looks at me and like gets pissed and walks off. And I was like, it's not God's law, it's man's law. So like what's the difference? Like 20 years ago I could smoke all I wanted to here. Like no one's gonna stop me. But that's the thing is I was like, what's the big deal, man? I think people are so conditioned.
Yeah, conditioned to follow the rules.
Yeah. I mean, if it was like breaking the law, it'd be different. But worst case, I'd be like ticketed or something. But who's gonna come in there and ticket me? Give me a break.
Mm. Yeah, I know what you mean. Jessica says you can be a leader in your field and show your vulnerability. It's this kind of
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, I think I do that.
And Amethyst said she was going down the right path, but it changed a little when she got angry and depressed. Then you, Thomas, as in you, Elsie, switched her main guides, and now she's happier. Do you remember doing that?
No. But she probably paid for it while it was live, so I don't remember how. You know how that is, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean,
we're like 50 people, and like we can't remember what we did.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, a lot of the those watching and listening, I imagine, do something similar, and so they know that if you're channeling or doing some stuff, you can't remember everything.
I think I did. I think I do remember that. Yeah.
So she remembers you when she first watched you. She said you were wild.
Yeah, I had my shirt off and I was ranting and raving. I did exactly what I did with Facebook. I just did it a different way. I was like, I know this will work. I was like, I have to get people watching. So I had my shirt off, and there were some other stuff involved, substances, and that are legal in some states. And yeah, so I just was like, my guides were like, go live now. And I was like, interesting. This should be fun. And yeah, people were just transfixed with me. So I was like, I just had my shirt off. I just kept ranting and raving. And like healing, I didn't care. I was like, let's see what I can do with this. A friend of ours said that. She goes, I didn't know once you went on TikTok, you would turn into a monster. So you see me on Facebook. But I was like, this Facebook thing ain't working. The way I act on Facebook is not working on TikTok. So I was like, okay, so I got to change this a little bit. So, yeah. And then
If you, I don't know if I haven't got a copy of it, but I think I've seen it online. If you look up the word human in Black's Law Dictionary, I think it says monster. Like the definition of the word human in Black's Law is monster.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But as I said, I think it's like with humans, we're the most dominant race. So it's
mm,
like on Earth at least. So it's like we had to get to this point. We had to be ruthless.
mm,
Like everyone's like love and light in the spiritual community, but I'm like, come on. Um, like we had to like hack and slash our way to get to where we were.
mm. Is that, do you think, because we have the power of creation? We all have the power of creation within us.
I don't know. I don't
What do you
know.
think of that? Because obviously, it's said that kind of we collectively create our reality as a whole. I mean, individually as well, but and you think, well, if those, shall we say, who are in control, like, or allegedly in control, then why do they need the population to create what they want by showing them what they want to happen? Um, it doesn't make sense.
I think they control the narrative.
So
So
if they can the narrative, then they obviously, for them to need to get another collection of people to create what they want means that they have no creative power within themselves,
or
which is
they
what
need more batteries.
maybe, yeah,
They need a lot of batteries. It's like those monks who prayed for peace in New York like 20 years ago. Like they decreased the crime rate by a third or something for like 30 days. They need
mm,
enough batteries. So if enough people, I've said this on TikTok a million times, if enough people are like angry, what's
mm,
going to happen? Or depressed? It's going to send out a wave of energy.
mm,
And then everyone, I mean, you know it, half the people clients we have, they're severely depressed.
mm,
So it's so it's like it just keeps happening.
mm,
But it's like now they're tied to their devices and they refuse to turn them off.
mm,
And I've been down that rabbit hole too. I'd really try not to now, but it's
mm,
like it's just like I go to the gym and everyone's looking at their phone. I go in the sauna with the one safe haven I have now, but it's no longer a safe haven. Everyone's on their phone. I can hear
mm,
everything through their headphones
mm,
if they're loud enough. And I'm just like, you
mm.
guys just can't sit here.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And funny, that's reminding me of something I learned the other day, or someone, a friend of mine, gave a presentation on the human avatar, as he called it, and he was talking about the position of the eyes, where in humans and kind of primates and mammals or whatever, um, because the eyes are close together,
Yeah.
everyone seems to be, well, not everyone, but there's a lot of people who are in fight or flight a lot of the time, like in the sort of the adrenal, like suffering from adrenal fatigue, and they're
Yeah.
in that state of exhaustion. And it's he was saying that it basically comes down to the fact that when, say, an animal or someone is focused and say on a hunt or is being hunted, their vision is straight. They're only focused on, they're not looking around them per se. They just want to get away or they want to get something. So they're, and that kind of narrow sort of tunnel vision creates or ignites the fight or flight response because they're fleeing or what have you. And looking, constantly staring at our phones or a computer screen is kind of narrowing that vision, narrowing that focus, and it's kind of almost inducing the fight or flight state,
Yeah.
because we're we're looking at one specific thing, and it is something to do with like the focus. I can't remember exactly, but it's something along those lines. I hope you sort of can kind of get the general gist of what I'm trying
Oh
to
yeah,
say.
I think the videos actually trigger it.
Hmm.
It's like you'll see one thing and it'll trigger you, and then I mean the messages I get. I had to make a video because someone like blocked me because scammers are messaging. But
Hmm.
and then they unblocked me, asked them why, and so they're like, "You got a bunch of scammers on TikTok messaging,"
Hmm.
and I didn't know who was who. Anyways, but I was like, "That's just the thing is that you could watch one video and it could trigger you, another one and it doesn't trigger you,
Hmm.
and you can make rash decisions, like literally without thinking about the decision you're making."
Hmm.
And I thought TikTok would be like this amazing thing.
Hmm.
When I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be interesting."
Hmm.
But then I realized, like, I mean, of course, even with Facebook back in the day, there's obviously a good and bad point to everything.
Hmm.
So, but it's like people are addicted.
Hmm.
Everywhere I go, everyone's on their phone.
Hmm.
If I go out to dinner with my friends, like I'll leave my phone alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
I'll just leave it in the car. I'm just like, I don't need my phone.
Hmm.
Um, because it could be clients, it could be anyone asking me, God knows what. And yeah, so I'm just like, I don't even need that distraction. But a
Hmm.
lot of people, they have to look at it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's there's no doubt the content plays a part. I feel like what you're saying about the focus and the narrow vision and inducing the fight or flight is kind of like the precursor. It sets the tone, and so that it can be absorbed. The content can be absorbed and put sort of induced into that fight or flight state even more. It enhances that state. Um, Tara says, crazy you mentioned adrenal fatigue. You must be picky. It's what I need to change. It's what I need in order to get back to the person who used to be Thomas was talking, like Thomas was talking about. Yeah, adrenal fatigue. In my understanding of it, I think I had it once. I vaguely remember. I can't remember what I did though. Um, I've done a frequency for it. Um, but yeah, adrenal fatigue. That's a real problem.
I think it comes down because when you're talking about it, I kept saying energy drink.
Hmm.
I drink them here and now, not as much as I used to, but it's like I think that was a precursor to everything else. Like you take
Hmm.
that enough,
Hmm.
your body's not primed to move. Like when I was in pest control, I was moving 10, 12 hours a day. It was
Hmm.
non-stop. So I needed that energy. And I wouldn't get loads of sleep sometimes, maybe 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours. But I would work 10, 12 hours a day. But I needed that energy. Like when
Hmm.
I wake up and I'm tired, I'm like, oh dear, I need a monster. So I just slam like an energy drink and a bunch of water. But I was drinking a lot of water too. But then
Hmm.
I think with the videos, it's the same basic concept. Is that
Hmm.
like now people are in this very like vegetative state, and they're not moving.
Hmm.
Where before you would go to the park and everyone would be in the park walking around.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, they'd be on the mountains hiking, and it's like now they're looking at their phone,
Hmm.
or people are just filming weird stuff all the time.
Hmm. Do you think the best sort of almost like the counter for adrenal fatigue is to reduce your stimulation? Like
Yeah,
because obviously the adrenal glands are working overtime because they're constantly having you're constantly being stimulated by whether it's by
yeah.
drinks or content, watching certain videos or anything. It could be anything that you feel like you need to be stimulated by. And doing anything other than doing nothing is kind of stimulation, I suppose, in a way. So the way to sort of, I mean, it might be hard. Obviously, it's going to be not easy to start off with, but I guess the the root cause is stimulation. So therefore, the counter to that is to reduce the amount of stimulation you have to allow your body to reset itself and balance itself back
Yeah.
to its optimal state, so to speak.
I mean, if I could go camping right now, I would go. Like, I literally turn everything off. I mean, I keep my phones with me in case I needed them, but like, I would just sit there in the camp for like it's too cold right now, but I would do it if it wasn't that cold. And just sit there, which would be very uncomfortable for like 2 days.
Yeah.
But I would do it. I've done it before. Or just go with a friend or something. But yeah, it would, just sit there. It's one of the reasons why I like go to waterfalls and stuff and swim in waterfalls. Because I'm just there by myself. And just enjoying myself. So yeah. But I think with all the new stuff, like the videos and stuff, I think people want instant gratification so fast,
Yeah.
It's like influencers on Instagram. All these women used to compare themselves to all these people, like these other women, with photoshopping their photos and all this stuff. And but now everyone's comparing themselves to videos, and there's so many. So it's like they're like, well, I don't look like that. I need to look like that. But then there's filters all over their faces. Especially on TikTok, there's like a million filters. You can shape your eyes and your mouth and do all this stuff. There's like 20 different filters to choose from. So it's like probably more than that. So it's like you can make yourself like de-age by 10 years. And then when you see that person in person, you're like, what the? Because you can see the filter slip sometimes with certain people. Like, I see it. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like, that filter it works.
Yeah, I mean, I've never used a filter actually, to my knowledge.
Well, they push videos with filters too. That's the thing. So like, they want you to use them. They want you to use certain things, so it pushes the video even more.
Yeah. I mean, people will like doing it, fair enough, but it's just not for me, I suppose. I'm gonna understand.
Yeah.
I don't plan on ever using one, but if people want to use it,
even if you were to go live on TikTok, it's automatically gonna put a filter on it.
Really?
Some sort. Yeah. So maybe Facebook does it too, I would imagine.
Yeah. I don't know. I've often thought about using them, but decided against it. Fufi says, can you still make campfires in GA?
Yeah. I'm sure you can make them still. I mean, it's not actually that cold today. I'm wearing a t-shirt. Yeah. There's plenty of places to camp around here. Yeah, there's plenty of places to camp. They're all over the place. We got the mountains here, and then so there's plenty of places, no matter where you go.
Do you have to worry about bears?
Black bears, but the only things we really got here are black bears and rattlesnakes. So rattlesnakes obviously are out right now, and they pretty much leave you alone. Black bears are not notorious for attacking people. Brown bears are, but black bears aren't. There's not really much here to be afraid of, other than like black widows, maybe copperheads, and I've never even seen. I think I've seen a black bear. My father, I think, was almost attacked by a boar once. It's like a pig they let out in the wild and it starts growing tusks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you let a domesticated pig out, it will start growing tusks.
Bloody hell. Michelle, hey Michelle. She says, I think it is sad because then people get stuck on the app because it corrects their flaws in speech marks, and then that keeps them connected to the app more.
Yeah. Does.
Like an addiction, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because I can't tell you the amount of times I've like reached for my phone the first thing in the morning to look at it. Like, and I'm like, what on earth am I doing? After like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, get this thing away from me. Let me get away. Yeah, so it's like, Yeah, but your body becomes accustomed to it. It's like if you put your shoes next to the door every day for like 2 weeks, your body is going to say, that's what I'm doing now. Your brain's going to be like, okay. So you've
Mm.
now programmed yourself.
Yeah.
I just feel bad for the kids because who knows how they're going to like grow up.
Mm. Yeah. No. In a enhanced technological world, which is a lot different to the one that we grew up in.
Yeah. I mean, what do we have? Nintendo?
Mm. Oh yeah, I used to play it all the time. Nintendo,
Yeah.
Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. That was my big thing on the weekend, but that was just like a weekend thing, you know?
Mm. Oh, we used to go out and play with call on friends and have games of
Yeah,
football.
we'd be out. We would be out like in the, in the woods, like partying it up. And when we were teenagers, we'd be driving to like abandoned places and
Mm.
partying, like 4 of us, 5 of us, a bunch of us, or getting in a fist fight somewhere. I mean, it was fun.
Mm.
Now no one wants to go outside.
Mm.
I took my,
Just
I
because,
took,
sorry.
no, you go.
I was going to say, Jessica said people thought about that about us on the Atari, which was obviously before Nintendo.
Yeah, I was on the Atari too when I was like 9. I never
Spectrum,
understood those games though. They're like the hardest things I ever tried to figure out.
the ZX Spectrum. Did you have that in the States?
What is it?
The ZX Spectrum, where
No,
you had
what
to
is it?
load them using a cassette tape. You had to load the games in a cassette tape.
Oh no, I had a Commodore 64
All right.
when I was a kid. The only game I really got was Zork and Batman. Zork was like a text-based RPG.
Mm. Oh, cool.
Um,
Yeah, I used to like that. Mm.
yeah, it was a very hard game for a 9-year-old, and or like a 6-year-old, anyways, or whatever age I was. But yeah, I mean, it's and then Final Fantasy and stuff like that when I was like a teenager probably.
Mm.
I think they bought me a Nintendo when I was like 9.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Right. Has anyone got any questions, or is there anything else? Do you want to talk about, brother, or should we?
I think we're complete.
Yeah, it feels like a good time to. Feels like it's about time, shall we say?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and contributing and everything.
We'll be back next week. I guess we're doing this again next week. So next week at same 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursday.
2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Sorry, 2 p.m. Eastern. Psychic Kitchen Podcast.
Indeed. And we're on Spotify as well, believe it or not.
We're on Spotify as well. You can find the Psychic Kitchen Podcast. I'm sure we might cut up these videos and put them up.
Michelle Klassen is amazing. She's got us on Spotify.
Yeah. Wait till we take over the other one. My God.
So right, yeah, we'll see you all again soon next week, and everyone have a good day, and we'll speak to you later.
Peace.
Laters.